Let's pick up with a new list. It's going to include Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Mohammed of Islam, Ayatollah Khomeini, Salman Rushdie, Eddie Izzard, the comedian, Dylan Moran, the comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump. Let's begin with them all meeting. Napoleon, the master of strategy and ambition. I'll weave in sharp contrast, vivid details, and fresh suttas. So, Napoleon, let's see, meeting the Buddha. Napoleon Bonaparte versus the Buddha, the strategist of conquest versus the teacher of liberation, contrasting ambition and letting go. Napoleon Bonaparte, master strategist and ruler of Europe, embodied unrelenting ambition. He declared, "Great ambition is the passion of a great character." For Napoleon, success lay in domination, strategy, and legacy. Whereas the Buddha, born into royalty, abandoned ambition entirely, teaching conquest of others is fleeting. The greatest victory is over oneself, for this victory cannot be undone. Whereas Napoleon brought control of nations, and the Buddha went for the peace of no control altogether. And then there was downfall. Napoleon's triumphs led to exile and then ruin. He lamented, "Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever." The Buddha, in contrast, taught that all worldly victories are impermanent. Fame, power, and legacy are like dew on a blade of grass, gone with the morning sun. Imagine Napoleon asking the Buddha, if ambition drives humanity forward, why abandon it? The Buddha might say, ambition drives suffering forward, let go of striving, and peace will arise within. Attachment to legacy and control. Napoleon was obsessed with securing his place in history. See, history is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon. The Buddha, however, rejected the desire for legacy, teaching, do not seek power in what is impermanent. Legacies are illusions that bind the mind to craving. While Napoleon believed greatness could be forged through will, the Buddha showed that true greatness lives in cessation of all becoming. He is truly great who is free from pride, anger, and craving. So, sutta twist, the Buddha might share the Sattigumba Sutta, where ambition and power are compared to a baited hook. Craving for power and fame is like a baited hook. The foolish bite it, unaware of the pain it brings. The wise let go and swim freely. Napoleon, ever defiant, might ask, but isn't the pursuit of greatness what defines us? The Buddha would respond, asterisk, greatness is not in domination, but in freedom. The mind unbound by uncraving knows peace that cannot be conquered. This comparison contrasts Napoleon's ambition, power, and attachment to legacy with the Buddha's teaching of renunciation, wisdom, and inner victory over craving. Alexander the Great is next. Alexander the Great versus the Buddha, the conqueror of empires versus the teacher of inner conquest. Contrasting conquest with liberation, Alexander the Great, the legendary Macedonian king, built the largest empire the world had ever known. He declared, "There is nothing impossible to him who will try." For Alexander, greatness was measured in territories conquered and the endurance of his name. The Buddha, by contrast, taught that true conquest was inward, not through domination. Greater than one who conquers 1,000 on the battlefield is one who conquers himself. Whereas Alexander's retrieve spanned the earth, the Buddha's victory transcended time and space, ending all suffering. Insatiability. Alexander's thirst was unlimitless, famously relenting when he ran out of lands to conquer. There are no more worlds to conquer. The Buddha would see in this a metaphor for the endless nature of craving. Craving is like a fire. It consumes without ever being satisfied. Put out the fire, and the mind finds peace. Imagine Alexander asking the Buddha, if greatness isn't in conquest, where is it found? The Buddha asked, greatness is found in the heart that needs nothing, for it needs nothing to be fulfilled. Attachment to immortality and fame. Alexander sought to etch his name into history, building cities in his honor and pursuing glory through deeds. He proclaimed, I would rather live a short life of glory than a long one of obscurity. The Buddha, however, revealed the trap of clinging to legacy. Names fade, cities crumble, and glory turns to dust. Through priest lives in abandoning the need to be remembered. While Alexander's greatness relied on becoming, the Buddha's teaching of Nibbana ends the cycle of becoming altogether. Sutta twist, the Buddha might share the Yudhanjaya Sutta, where he describes the futility of worldly victories. Even a conqueror on the battlefield will face death. The wise conquer the self and live untouched by fear or defeat. Alexander, driven by ambition, might say, but isn't it our deeds that makes us eternal? The Buddha would respond, eternity is not in deeds or names, but in freedom from the craving that drives them. Let go, and you will find peace beyond all becoming. This comparison highlights Alexander's boundless ambition, attachment to fame, and conquest of the world, contrasted with the Buddha's teaching of inner victory, the futility of craving, and freedom through renunciation. Muhammad of Islam is up next. Muhammad, Islam versus the Buddha, the prophet of monotheism versus the teacher of liberation beyond that. Contrasting message and path, Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, united the Arabian Peninsula through monotheism, revelation, and moral laws. He proclaimed, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. His message offered submission to one transcendental creator as the ultimate truth. The Buddha, however, taught a path beyond belief in gods or a creator, stating, the universe is governed by cause and effect. The wise seek freedom not through belief, but through seeing the nature of suffering and its end. Whereas Muhammad revealed faith in God's will, the Buddha guided seekers to freedom through direct insight. Quirk and leadership, Muhammad combined spiritual guidance with practical leadership, establishing laws to govern the conduct of individuals and society. He emphasized charity, justice, and community, saying, none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. The Buddha, while also teaching compassion and ethical conduct, took a different focus. Compassion is boundless when freed from attachment. Let go of self and other, and the heart rest in peace. Mahajan Muhammad asking the Buddha, can society survive without belief in a higher authority? The Buddha might reply, society thrives on ethical action and wisdom. Belief alone is not enough. Freedom arises when the mind lets go of all clinging. Attachment to divine will and liberation. Muhammad taught that submission to Allah's will is the path to ultimate peace and paradise. The Buddha, in contrast, rejected the notion of a divine creator, teaching there is no creator of suffering. It arises through craving. And craving and suffering ceases. While Muhammad's vision centered on faith and the afterlife, the Buddha emphasized Nibbana, freedom in this very life. Do not look to the heavens for peace. See clearly the nature of this moment, and you will find peace unshaken by life or death. Twist, the Buddha might share the Kalama Sutta, which encourages critical examination rather than blind belief. Do not accept something because it is taught or proclaimed. Investigate for yourself. Does it lead to harm or to peace? Walk the path that leads to liberation. Muhammad, steadfast in his message, might reply, but is not faith itself a guiding light? The Buddha would respond, faith can guide, but wisdom liberates. Freedom arises when faith is fulfilled by direct seeing. This comparison highlights Muhammad's faith-driven submission to the divine, whereas ethical living contrasted with Buddha's self-reliance, critical investigation, and liberation beyond belief. Ayatollah Khomeini is next. Ayatollah Khomeini versus the Buddha. The revolutionary cleric versus the teacher of liberation beyond authority. Contrasting authority and renunciation, Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran's Islamic revolution, established a doctrine of Faqih, which is ruled by Islamic jurists, anchoring power in religious authority. He proclaimed, Islam is not just a religion, it is a government. Khomeini sought divine law as inseparable from political life. The Buddha, in contrast, relinquished authority entirely, teaching no law, ruler, or system can bring lasting peace. True liberation arises when the mind lets go of all craving, control, and power. Where Khomeini built institutions of government, the Buddha dismantled the need for governance of the mind. Quirk and moral absolutism. Khomeini's leadership was marked by strict enforcement of Sharia law, rooted in unyielding sense of divine truth. He said, "We will not compromise on principles, for our path is God's path." The Buddha, while teaching ethical conduct, rejected moral absolutism, focusing instead on intention and wisdom. It is not law that purifies, but understanding. Act with skill and compassion, guided not by dogma, but by what brings no harm. Imagine Khomeini asking the Buddha, how can a society thrive without strict laws and moral order? The Buddha might reply, laws restrain the body, but wisdom liberates the mind. True harmony arises not from force, but from understanding, attachment to ideology and power. Khomeini's resolution tied faith and governance together, using power to enforce an uncompromising vision of Islam. The Buddha, however, taught that attachment to ideology, even noble ones, binds the mind to suffering. Those who cling to views are not free. Let go of all doctrines, even those you hold dear, and the mind will know true peace. While Khomeini sought freedom from external control, the Buddha taught that it rises from within. Freedom cannot be imposed. It arises when the mind sees clearly and lets go. Twist. The Buddha might share the Brahmajala Sutta, which critiques all forms of attachment to views and doctrines. Clinging to views, whether internalist, externalist, nihilist, or moralist, absolutist, leads to suffering. The wise walk beyond views, finding freedom in the cessation of all attachment. Khomeini, steadfast in his vision, might respond, but without doctrine, how do we guide people towards doctrine, towards beyond truth? The Buddha would reply, truth cannot be forced. It arises when the mind is free of clinging and guided by wisdom and compassion. This comparison highlights Khomeini's use of religious authority and laws as power of transformation, contrasted with the Buddha's path of renunciation and wisdom beyond all ideological clinging.